Hi again then guys, and welcome to my 38th pick. We're getting much higher on the list now in my top 50 favourite cars for 2018, and this is a car which has swapped around quite a lot, not just in a favourites kind of way in a list, but just in the way I view the car, the amount that I use the car. And it's a manufacturer which I have a huge amount of love for, a huge amount of respect for, but at the same time, it's ironically, of all the cars on the list and all of the crazy ones, this is probably the most controversial car on the entire list. Not because of people thinking it should be here or it shouldn't, or it should be higher or lower, but just because in real life, especially, more so than in racing games, it's a very controversial car because it's a controversial brand. Tesla has, it seems, as many haters as they do fans, and I'm not entirely sure why people do that. It's almost like they see how popular they are and they just like to buck against the trend. Now, to some degree, I can understand that thinking. I like a lot of cars which are not the obvious choices. Many of the cars on this list are not the obvious choices for favourite cars. I mean, we've got a Daihatsu in my top 50. How many people would do that? Probably not that many, conventionally speaking. But I love the less obvious choices, and often they really appeal to me. That's why some of my favourite brands include companies like Panoz and Maserati. On this occasion, though, this is one of the more mainstream choices on my list. Tesla is a popular brand. They're becoming more popular, selling more cars, and becoming better and better known and more loved. At least by those who do like them. But for me, when I first saw the Tesla, or when I was first introduced to Tesla overall, was with the Roadster. Of course, it was their first car. Then the Model S came along, and I thought, okay, kind of reminds me of a Jaguar XF, for instance, that kind of rounded, obviously not German, but kind of influenced by German design. And I thought, sure, it's an electric sedan, a luxury sedan, I'm not too interested in it. And that was on Gran Turismo 6, in particular, that I first noticed the Model S. But then, as I started to actually drive the car, and beyond that, to look into it in the real world, I started to become intrigued by the car in a very similar way to how I feel about the Sauvage Rival thanks to Drive Club. Because I saw the car in real life before I ever played the game, I thought nothing of it, I thought it looked generic and boring. Then I played it in the game, and it got me intrigued. This big, long four-door car, which is far faster than it has any right to be. Does that sound familiar? Yes, it does. Just like the Tesla Model S. And for me, my love for the Model S didn't start until they started releasing the P and D models. The dual models in particular, which of course are all-wheel drive. The P85, then the P90. I think there's a P95 as well, now the P100. Doubtless they'll have something even crazier. Of course they have the new sports car, but I'm thinking specifically of the Model S. Now visually, I do still prefer the first generation Model S over the facelift. I'm not a fan of the facelift, to be honest. It looks a little bit too much like the Celine version to me. And I do love Celine, but I don't love the design of the Celine Tesla. To me, it looks a little bit tacky. Whereas the original Tesla, with that grille that they started having on all of their cars, to me, it looks distinguished and set apart. Whereas the facelift, to me, looks a little bit more generic, a bit too smoothed off and simple. But of course, each to their own, and a very popular design style for electric cars is to have very smooth, clean, simple aerodynamic styling, and that's fair enough. I just personally prefer this one that you can see in the video, the original face. Now, the P100D in particular is of course the obvious choice for performance because you improve the battery and various other things, as well as having this car which literally has more power than a Zonda R, and the torque that you'd expect from something with Bugatti written on the back. It's an insane electric car, period. The fact that it can do all of these other things as well is what makes me love it. Because as I mentioned in the previous episode about the Maserati Gran Cabrio, I genuinely love cars, and a lot of my favourite cars are those which do a brilliant job of combining great performance with true usable practicality. And as far as I'm concerned, even though it's not in my top 10, nowhere near in fact, as far as all-round performance cars go, I believe that the Tesla is kind of an unbeatable package, if you're really honest about it, because although many people would argue, no, the Nissan GT-R is better, or the Ferrari FF is better, or the Aston Martin Rapide is better, all of which are strong arguments, especially the Nissan, because of its price, I would still say that the Tesla is better, because it's not really down to an opinion. If you talk opinions, then you can argue all day, but if you talk facts, the Tesla dominates that bracket. There is quite simply nothing, absolutely nothing else on the market which offers what the Tesla offers for the price with that performance. Because as great as a Nissan GT-R is, it has 4 seats. That's the most it ever has, that's the most it ever will have, because that's what it is. The Tesla has 7. That's a fact. Now, whether or not you personally need 7 is a subjective question. The objective fact, though, is that it has more seats, and by definition, that is more practical, and there isn't even an argument to be had. That's just a fact. It also has more trunk space, because you've got a trunk under the bonnet and under the boot, because of the fact that all the tech is so low down in the car, low center of gravity, the motors allow that. So you open up the bonnet, you've got a trunk. You open up the trunk, you got a trunk. You've got trunks all over the place. It's like a mutant elephant. It's a great car for that. Storage space is great. 7 seats if you want them, 5 even if you don't attach the extra ones in the trunk for the kids. You've got all-wheel drive, obviously on the dual models, which in itself is good, more traction. I know a lot of people don't prefer all-wheel drive because, well, various reasons, driver feedback, they consider it to be more professional and more fun with rear-wheel drive. That's fair enough, and of course they also have rear-wheel drive versions. Then you've got the fact that you're looking at around 300 miles of range. Some were less. I believe they've now refined that to do a little bit more than 300. For an electric car, that's great. The running costs are, factually speaking, far lower than anything else like this. Way lower than the Ferrari, the Aston, or a GT-R. Not even close, in fact. And although the car itself is more expensive than a GT-R, it's still cheaper than something like a Rapide. So it's just got all of these strengths across the board. And a lot of the issues which many people have about Teslas that they like to bring up against them is, well, actually, they're not that good for the environment because creating the car and creating the electricity actually does more damage than a conventional petrol or diesel. I don't really care because, as I've said before, I don't like electric cars because they save the earth. I like them because of the performance that they offer and the totally different style of performance which an electric car has compared to a conventional one. To me, it's no different to loving a gas turbine. I love it, and it's different. It's not better. In fact, in some ways, it's worse. Likewise with an electric car. They're not as strong top end. Although the Tesla is getting there, of course. Top speed's getting pretty crazy on that new Roadster. But conventionally, electric cars do still have downsides. They're very heavy. Range isn't that great. Top end speed is generally limited because of protecting the batteries, etc., etc. So, without ending up rambling too much, because this is already a longer episode than most, to me the Tesla is one of those cars which I will always love, basically on an all-round level, because of how, factually speaking, capable a car it is. Something which can outrun a Lamborghini in a quarter mile, which this can. Something with more power than a Zonda R, but still costs less than an Aston Martin and has more seats than a Mazda people carrier. To me, that is an incredible all-round package, regardless of whether you like the brand. Even if I didn't like Tesla, I would still like the car, because factually speaking, it's a capable machine. So that's it overall for this particular pick, and of course if you are new to the series, you can check out others by clicking through at the end. But that's it for this episode. Of course, I'll see you next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.